for us, at least, this will be our last live recording of the Rant Network for 2022. We will be back live again in January of 2023 with a new website, new feel, new stuff. We can't wait for 2023. But we still got to wrap up 2022 with our top 5 stories of the year. And Stuart, at number 5, and these 5 stories, the order is really less relevant. It just kind of like what we wanted to shoot out there. But once again, what is fascinating is how racism in all forms this year reared its ugly head in 2022.
Racism spans a spectrum, David, and we talked about anti-Semitism, black on white, Republican on Democrat, red on blue, all year long. But like anti-Semitism's up 35% in the United States year over year. Red on yellow, red on blue is probably up 75% than last year, and it's getting worse and worse. Frankly, I think that the political parties are fueling a lot of this divisiveness. I think because of a lack of better words, they have nothing else to talk about except divisiveness. And, that also meets another agenda, right? By causing chaos, you remove people's attentions from the things that matter. The price of bread, milk, sugar, and the pursuit of happiness with your family. When inflation consumes the average worker in America or North America, or for that matter, the world, racism's a wonderful card to throw in there to cause chaos and blame.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, kudos to the Kanye Wests of this world, and kudos to, the government of Quebec with its racially motivated laws. Black Lives Matter. They had put their foot in their mouth, with
Oh, they
all the
put their knee
racism.
down.
And then there's all the entire thing of, critical race theory that continues to permeate. We have a professor at the University of Washington in St. Louis who said, "Hey, I'm right, you're wrong. Don't argue with me about race theory." This is just not going to get any better, Stuart, in any time frame whatsoever. We have no tolerance in society. We're looking terrible, and I agree with you. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel here. Frankly, I'm ill with racism. Dealt with it again not that long ago. It just doesn't want to go away.
Let's keep moving. Number 4. End of COVID, or is it a tridemic?
Well, this is the confusion, is that, we went through 2 years of lies my CDC told me, my government told me, Dr. Fauci told me, all that kind of stuff. And yes, I know some of they say, listen, on one hand, you have to trust the science. On the other hand, the science changes. We were blocked. You and I were blocked because we talked about masks and we were proven right. And instead of getting a retraction and apology from the social media, we were shut down. We'll talk about that in just a second. But when Joe Biden was interviewed in one of his only 7 sit-down interviews that he's done in 2022, he said COVID is over. And then Fauci kind of went, oh, no, wait, no. COVID's not over. The pandemic's not over. We're still dealing with stuff. And as you can see, hospitals are still dealing with it. But we're dealing with COVID differently. And vaccination confusion and other confusion. And Stuart, so is COVID really over? I think the answer is it'll never be over. But it's just how we handle it. But again, the government needing to control our lives, and now with no COVID, what do you do, Stuart? What do you do?
David, governments like control, and control is something that they got when the pandemic started. Again, the searching out for factual evidence of where it came, how it came, and what is the process to deal with it ongoing is still 3 major questions unanswered. Yes. And the current government that wants to keep control still is refusing to give that transparency that we, the people, globally have the right to know. Possibly in peddling of power and control, like why stir the apple cart because we got more control out of the deal. But at the end of the day, David, COVID is another version of SARS and SARS 2. And I think that the coming years we'll see mutations of all
Well,
three of these wonderful viruses that seem to be all test tube viruses. And maybe we'll get to see some people get silver bracelets over the cause of it. Because really,
well, I don't think that that's going to really happen because as long as certain people are in power, they don't want the truth to be told. And that's not a conspiracy theory. So for those of you who do not agree, be careful with when you throw that word conspiracy theory. It is really
uh,
amazing how you cannot, you cannot be overt. And we'll talk about that in just a second. You can't express yourself and your feelings because, and when it came to COVID, the shutdown, the mindset, and let's go to our next story because this is related to COVID, Stuart. Speaking of shutting people down, the most docile country I know of, Canada, decided like there was this anger earlier in 2022 with respect to Trudeau's draconian rules and attitude, which, by the way, hasn't really changed. He learned nothing. And earlier this year, a bunch of truckers from Western Canada wanted to protest on Parliament Hill. And that's our number three story, Stuart, the Freedom Convoy.
when the Canadian government decides to put into force the War Measures Act and steal money from GoFundMe, steal money from trucking bank accounts, freezing out their funds, where a free society becomes, as you use the word, draconian, reminiscent of Argentina, right? Cuba, where the government takes your money, your livelihood, your freedom. This trucking convoy, for the most part, was very peace loving. I know some media outlets tried showing it as a band of, tirade
Extremists,
people, but
extremists.
extremists. But I mean, I'm sorry. Do you not remember Black Lives Matter in the United States and Canada? They destroyed an entire city. You
Yep.
remember Oregon? But we don't want to talk about that because that will be considered racist. You know, but with all things considered, if you're driving a truck, you're black, you're white, you're Latino, you're Asian, you're a woman, you're a man, you're gay, you're transvestite, you're everything. Just because you're a trucker, you're a bad guy. In
Well,
Canada,
I
I think South Park said it
it
best.
was it was
Blame
worse.
Canada.
It was worse than that, Stuart. And you kind of started going down that right path. And kudos to a lot of people. This was a systemic approach to shutting down free speech. This was a group of people who were tired of being told that if you want to be a trucker in Canada, cross the border, you had to be double vaccinated. You weren't allowed to not be double vaccinated. And the truckers were saying, can you stay out of my life? And we're going to protest like we're allowed in a democracy to protest our feelings. But to dissuade these protesters, to deflect from Trudeau's, you know, obvious fallacy as a leader, he had to paint them as extremists. So, of course, the one token or several token truckers who had Nazi flags or racial flags or whatever, look, they're all racists. Again, it was all about dissuading and deflecting and not dealing with the truth. Justin Trudeau ran away. He cried to his security people. They said, "Oh my God, this is going to be you're a threat on your life. We got to hide you." And by the way, all this came out in a recent commission where Justin Trudeau and the Liberals went too far with the Emergencies Act. That the Trudeau government was complicit in literally, you know, uh, delivering ignorant statements to Canadians. And there are going to be no repercussions to it. That's the sad part with this Freedom Convoy. You know what? But the beautiful thing is, before we go on to story number two, that this convoy went global, and people tried to send messages to their governments. But in turn, the message that we all got was, if you don't comply with the government, look what happens.
Yep. David, I'm going to introduce you for the number two top story: Twitter and free speech.
Well, talk about, if you look at our 15 or 14 stories that we've gotten till now, how many times did we talk about free speech? And free speech was on trial in 2022 and even before, but this year in particular with Twitter. So we know that Elon Musk tried his best to buy out Twitter and try to embarrass Twitter and what have you. And at the beginning of the year, we thought it was a joke. But we kept saying, we kept pointing the fingers that freedom of speech is being squashed. We were squashed by social media. We were accusing, our social media platforms of not distributing our messaging. And we were told it was a conspiracy theory until Elon Musk buys out Twitter and then
Yep.
publishes what we now, even till now, the Twitter
6
files.
dumps. Yep.
And one of these dumps proved that the FBI came in
And the military.
and the military to squash free speech, to squash information, to squash.
It goes beyond that, David. There is now in the last dump showing that the military was doing an exercise over population control with Twitter.
So the problem here that we've seen, folks, is that just recently, he puts out a Twitter poll. Elon, do you want me to stay as CEO? 57% says no. So he says, okay, I'll resign. I'll find somebody to replace me. But at the end of the day, this is the incredible thing. Journalists who wanted to ban people who dissented with them was okay. He bans them for misinformation. That's blocking free speech. This argument of free speech, Stuart, has really taken on a new spin in 2022. But I'm not surprised, and I don't think you are, that Facebook, YouTube, all the social media platforms that we've been trying to, except for Rumble, have done their utmost to ensure that we have limited to no exposure. Stuart, last comment about Twitter before we go to our number one story.
We got banned from Twitter too during the pandemic.
Well, that too. So look,
okay,
ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the number one story. And I'm going to tell you that the gentleman here who's with me, and I use the word gentleman, and there are those who will be saying to me, what gentleman, did something that nobody did, no journalist did. He found a story early on about Russia stopping the delivery of pesticides. And nobody picked up the story. Nobody recognized the relationship. And that domino effect turned into really the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Stuart?
So pesticide, let's just go back to February this past year, when ammonia nitrate that is controlled by Russia by 86% and China by about 10 represent 96% of all the ammonia nitrate, which is the basis of almost every single fertilizer. When Russia banned the export of this very important, product right before planting, seeding the soil, they declared war on the world. And that's when I said this war began. Russia declared war on the world, and the war in Ukraine is just a small part of that ammonia nitrate war. Battle to control the world. They can't do it with oil anymore, so now they're pivoting to raw resources. And if you think for a minute that being dependent on electric vehicles is going to be any better, where 80% of all the cobalt in the world is controlled by China. Again, guys, this war in Ukraine, we predicted, David, back in February, weeks and weeks ahead of them actually launching into what we now know is the most expensive war of the modern era.
It's frightening, though, to think that, what we've done is now people know where Ukraine is, who Vladimir Zelensky is, and how every politician used this war to further their own political cause. Just, you look at the Biden administration welcoming in this week, Zelensky talking about giving him now Patriot missiles. All this grandstanding, all of this stuff was all related to, political gain. The sad part is that the Ukrainians, kudos to them for standing up and fighting hard. We interviewed a few people straight out of the front lines this year who talked about the life and how terrible it was. We brought to home what life would be, what was like in early on in the war, and the world turned a blind eye. The world shut it out. Zelensky wanted to address the world at the World Cup. FIFA said no. All right, we don't give political leaders these messages. Talk about hypocrisy, right? No problem to give to the Qataris, but we're going to ignore Ukraine. Ukraine has turned into everybody's bastard child, and nobody, the help and the non-help and the this and that, the back and forth. And while Zelensky was called Time Man of the Year and whatever, at the end of the day, this war in Ukraine, you call it the most expensive war. This is tantamount to global war. That's the fear right now. And as we end this broadcast, Stuart, and as we end 2022, let's hope and pray that this war doesn't escalate like we thought it was earlier this year, and that we can actually have peace in 2023.
David, to you as well, after nearly 300 episodes deep, nearly 2 years, our second year in review. David, it's been a pleasure sitting across from you sometimes and sitting side by side. And I wish you and I wish everyone else a very happy and healthy holiday season. Travel safe, be safe. I think David may jump in on a couple of broadcasts. We may rebroadcast some of the best as we try and enjoy our holiday week as well. Again, to everyone, happy, healthy New Year's, happy holidays. And we'll see you in 2023 for a bigger, better year.
Health and peace, everybody.